So today, personally, I'm speaking about a project we did around CCE and CSC, which is child criminal exploitation and child sexual exploitation, around how we use media and film to engage with young children about the dangers of exploitation. So the Anywhere Kids film was a collaboration with Humberside Police and Crime Commissioner, Not in Our Community, and a local firm who produced the animation called My Pockets. And the idea was that we told stories of young children that had been exploited locally in a way that could engage younger children. So children sort of year 6, year 7 at primary school, so we could tell them about the dangers of exploitation, what it looks like, obviously without it being too dark and scary, but really trying to help young people prepare for adolescence, for their teenage years, and really just to open a conversation up amongst young people and help teachers really discuss what is a really difficult subject to discuss.
To tell you something that happened to me, and some other kids too. It was something bad that hurt me, and I want to tell you about it to warn you, and anyone who cares about you, so that together we can stop it from happening to anyone else. It's not always easy being a kid. Doesn't matter where you're from, the city, the town, or the country. Doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl, or if you have the latest phone, or an old phone that's got a crack in it. Doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, because sometimes things just don't go right. And sometimes you need people to help you. And what I'm saying is that some people actually want to help you, and some people pretend they want to help you, but actually don't care about you at all. I want to show you some of the ways you can tell the difference. Take Jaden. Everyone always used to say that Jaden was the cutest kid they knew. But now with his new sister, there's not too much room in the house, not too much money coming in. So Jaden started hanging around outside more, kicking a ball against the garages, chatting on messaging apps, on games, in places his mum would never check or ask him about. He met new mates. Some were older than him and pretty cool. And what was really brilliant was that they had cash. They gave him free burgers and chicken from the takeaway. They gave him new trainers and a jacket. His mum would question why he was dressing different, but his mates had warned him to keep his mouth shut. And every now and then he'd do a favour for him, drop something off, pick some money up. He got robbed a few times, and that meant he was in debt to his mates now. But luckily they gave him ways to pay them back. After all the years of feeling a bit weird about himself, he finally felt like he belonged. He felt like that cute kid again. His mum would have a real go at him for being out all night. And it seemed to him that it was his new mates that really cared about him and not his mum. If she tried to stop him going out at night, he'd threaten her and climb out the window and run. It'd never been like him to threaten his mum. Then the favours got bigger, like get on a train and go here and pick up this thing, or get the coach, or stand watch here all night long, and have this knife and use this phone, and it's just some drugs, it's just some money for drugs. And when he said he didn't want to do it, his mates said that they would hurt his sister and his mum, and that he owed them, and if he didn't pay them back, they would come for him. And right now he's sat in some strange flat with drugs, a knife and a phone in the middle of the night, and he knows this don't feel right, but he just don't know what to do. He doesn't know who to trust. And he's wondering if he should call his mum and tell her he feels scared. His finger hovers just above the screen, and he wonders if he should make the call. Take me. I got chatting to Josh online. He was lovely. We talked through online games or messaging apps, Snapchat, TikTok, anything. Just like the crowd that Jaden got in with, Josh could be everywhere in my house. I could be talking to him on the TV in the front room, on my laptop or on my phone. Mum and Dad never asked, so they didn't even know. He told me everything I wanted to hear. He really understood me. I sent him pictures and he told me I looked beautiful. I never let my mum or dad see my phone, or my mates. Josh said he was a bit older than me and that if I told anyone or showed anyone his messages, they'd try and split us up. Then nearly 2 years since we started chatting, we met up in person. He was everything I hoped he'd be. He bought me trainers and jewellery, and how could you tell a 13-year-old girl that there was something wrong with that? At first I wasn't sure that I wanted to go to bed with him, but he bought me all this stuff and he said he loved me. I felt a bit scared. I felt like I couldn't say no. He said the age gap didn't make a difference. He said it'd be a laugh to get drunk and take drugs every day even, and for his mates to come over and have sex. And that was really special to him. And I didn't realise what was happening to me. And when my mum and dad asked me what I was doing out so late, and what the marks on my arms were, I just got angry. But really, deep down, I just wanted them to stop me doing stuff and keep me safe. Josh said my family weren't good for me, that he preferred me without them. He said the same about my mates. And before I knew it, there was only Josh and his mates, and other strange men, and no one else. And if I said no, he'd get out a knife and push it really hard against me. I was too scared to think about leaving. I was just so scared. He was my Josh, but also, what I didn't realise then was that he was also a criminal, and his victim was me. And as I sat there locked in his flat, I wondered, should I tell someone? And me and Jaden were not the only ones. There are kids from the city, town and countryside, from families of all shapes and sizes. We are not a type. We are any kid, anywhere that might have a bit of stuff going on, that might just feel a little alone or a little bit lost. We can all be vulnerable, just in different ways. They spot us and then they take control. If someone starts building your trust in them by buying you expensive stuff, then question it. Make sure they don't want something in return. Don't feel you need to repay someone who's bought you a gift. If someone starts texting you a lot, or talking to you online, through messaging or even gaming, and saying they really like you and that they are your mate, then question why they'd want you to keep that secret. Make sure you can trust who you're speaking to before you let them in. People who frighten and threaten you are not your friends. And if any of this feels like you, even if just in the back of your mind you think it might be you, then tell someone. Tell your mum, tell your dad, tell a friend, tell a teacher, a police officer, a social worker, a youth worker, the lady who works in the shop. Tell anyone you can trust. But reach out for that help and that care. Things can change for you. Look for the person who can open the door. Whether it's happening to you or you're worried something like this is happening to someone you know. Support is available. Help is available. You are worth more than you think, and there are people who care about you. Report concerns to the police on 101, or anonymously to Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. For more information and resources, visit notinowrcommunity.org.
I was working with Kevin Bales at the time, and we came up with this idea. Could we devise a multimedia educational package which was aimed at key stage 3 and 4, roughly, that's 11 to 16, that raised awareness of historical and contemporary slavery, but did so in a way that gave teachers and students different points of access to this complex issue, whether through music performance, creative writing, art, or animation. We're very interested in the music. We're also interested in animation, the sort of thing we've just seen here. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we managed to get funding for this, amazingly, at the time, because we didn't think we would. And we were able to then use some of that money to hire a professional musician called Paul Field, who had worked on an earlier project called on the slave track called Cargo. And then we were also able to work with animators, teachers. We also draw on the expertise of Kathleen, who's in the room here. And then together, we devised a set of pieces, some of them narrations, others of them songs. And this went through several iterations. And then we, I suppose showcase would be the right word, what we come up with in a series of workshops held at the Institute, where we invited teachers to come in and talk about you know, does this work? Is it age appropriate? And deal with some of those kind of issues about how we present this to young audiences. And we got a lot of feedback about what would work, what we might need to change, and so on and so forth. So it's a kind of iterative process. So moving forward, we were able to do this in a year. Sounds a long time, but it's hard pressed to do that. We launched it in 2015 with a designated Stolen Lives website where teachers and students could download 17 songs and narrations, all of them with graphics or animation. And each of these was meant to stand on its own, but they could also form a broader narrative or story, which begins with an interesting little piece which I devised drawing on some work I was doing with the Docklands Museum, a short piece on imagining what it feels like to be a slave. And then it ends with a film, or a song rather, called Blind Eye, a song that touches on the urgency to do something about contemporary slavery, and that was the emphasis, rather than looking the other way. And that was a kind of motif of the whole collection. This is something, it's out there, it's hidden in plain sight, but we can't look away because we've got to do something about it. So some of the pieces are broadly historical, and I can talk about those if you want to, but others are to do with contemporary slavery, specifically. Some of the issues that Andrew's already addressed, trafficking, exploitation, abuse, how you get entrapped in this cycle of exploitation, control, and kind of alienation and exclusion. But the best of them, I think, pose interesting connections between the two. We're going to just play you one of the songs, which is actually quite short, called Strange Cargo. And then I'll just say something very briefly about it at the end. But this is Strange Cargo.
It's a strange cargo that lives and breathes, that feels the fear and pain. A strange cargo that hears and sees the depth of humanity's shame. And it's fragile like tears on the face of a child, soft as a lover's first kiss. And when merchandise starts with a breakable heart, what strange cargo is this? It's a strange cargo with a heart and a soul that can love and give love in return. A strange cargo stillborn and sold in a history that just never learns. Someone's daughter or son torn apart from their world, left a stranger to all that they miss. With their hopes now betrayed, dreams are stolen away. What strange cargo is this? Child, soft as a lover's first kiss. And when merchandise starts with a breakable heart, what strange cargo is this? strange cargo is this?
Okay, and the power of that is not just a lyric, I think, it's that final merging where the container idea of the container, which is very profound in histories of slavery, then it becomes an actual container, and the focus is on contemporary slavery. And as I say, I think the best of those songs still hold up in that sense of posing connections and making people think about broad chronologies and how something in the past still echoes in the present. I'm conscious of time, but just it's worth saying that this was meant to be a kind of flexible resource. We made it possible for teachers to students to download songs and use them ready-made and use them as aids in the classroom, but we also invited them to put on their own performances of these songs. So we put backing tracks on the website, and along with the lyrics and the scores, so they can do their own performances, and then we wanted them to send them back to us. We didn't get a great response to that, but we did get some response to it, and there was some very interesting, including one from France, but we did a very successful project in Sierra Leone, which Catherine will also know about, where the British Council used Stolen Lives as part of a project called Open Your Eyes, where groups of students in Sierra Leone did their own interpretations of these songs very effectively, which exists somewhere, but for some reason not uploaded on the website. But it was very interesting, and this is the first time, one of the first initiatives of its kind in Sierra Leone, to see local people kind of coming up with their own performances of those songs. That leads on to impact. I think we did have an impact, and clearly the rest of it had an impact too in terms of this project. And that was very manifest in Sierra Leone, but you can point to other things. We got support from one of the major teachers' unions, NASUWT. We did performances at Hull Freedom Festival. We did a follow-up resource focused on refugees called Repairing Broken Lives, which was based on workshops with asylum seekers and refugees. So it's kind of different focus, which is more akin to what you're doing, Andrew. So the whole thing, I think, has had an ongoing impact, even though it is now 7 years since we actually did it. In terms of reflections on this, I had a number. One of them, which is just to follow on what I've said, one of them is that obviously this piece was devised in a very different political climate. It was before Black Lives Matter. It was before a lot of the kind of focus we now have on issues around the teaching of Black history. And I'm thinking particularly of the Black Curriculum Project set up in 2019 by the Virginia Senate and others, and that project has a very different take on the slave trade, and while not antagonistic to teaching historical slavery, does have a much broader take on how Black British history should be taught. In 2015, that was sort of one less on the horizon. It was less of a preoccupation than our aim, and I said this in mitigation, which was to raise awareness about contemporary slavery, which was, as I said earlier, was not really that well understood at the time, and we were getting much, as an institute, we were getting much more involved in researching and teaching contemporary slavery. So this was a piece which was devised to fit into that agenda, to think about the historical, link it to the contemporary, but in the process, get students thinking about contemporary slavery and how you could teach this and how you could introduce quite a complex issue to quite young people and get them thinking about some of those issues. The third thing I'd probably say about this is that I'm looking at it again before I came up here. These things quickly become outdated. For instance, there's a piece in here about the forthcoming Qatar World Cup. and exploitation of all the issues around the building of the stadiums, and that seemed a long way in the distance, and now it's upon us. Another thing we did, and I think it was probably a mistake, we put a lot of statistics on some of these animations, and as you probably know, these quickly become outdated and can easily be challenged. And in the end, they were probably unnecessary, because I think the power of Stolen Lives is some of the stories and some of the things that, like I've just shown you, Straight Chicago is a good example of something that stands on its own as a piece. You don't need statistics to tell that story. You don't need to be bombarding people with information about just how many people are unnecessarily entrapped in these issues. And I suppose the final thing is that this was an experiment for us in 2015, but it convinced me that there was something in this, as we could use, if we did it sensitively, we could use these kind of resources to raise awareness about key issues. We could educate a new generation of young people, not necessarily to be anti-slavery activists, but to be good citizens. And that was, I think, one of the things that we had in our minds. This was about just making people think about these issues. This is going on around you. This is how it can happen. It can happen to you, and all of those kind of ideas. So, and it led us down the path of some other things. Some of the public raising campaigns we did around breaking the chain. It's just a sort of multimedia kind of experience. It made us think a little bit more about how we could harness multimedia approaches to the teaching of these issues. And it also led to some of the work we were hearing about later from Rami in Sierra Leone, where we purposely sought out filmmakers to produce films around some of these questions. So it was about being inventive and being innovative in terms of how you could teach some of these issues. So I think Stolen Lives was in a way kind of an interesting landmark for us as an institute. It set us down a path of greater innovation and experimentation around how we could address some of these issues. And one final thing I'll say, and this came really out of working with Bami in Sierra Leone. One of the things I learned, and I think we learned, is this is not just about raising awareness about these issues in the UK. You can use these resources, the kind of multimedia approaches, to build resilience in communities which are threatened by some of these issues. And think of communities where many more people have a mobile phone than they will have a book. And one of the things that came home to me talking to children in Sierra Leone on one of the trips organised by Kathleen was a lot of these kids had phones, and that this was something we could tap into through these kind of multimedia approaches to build resilience in communities so that anti-slavery could begin on the ground. So it's not just about us, the UK, but it's about what we can do to kind of deal with the issue in country, so to speak. So I think in that sense, this was a bit of an eye-opener, really, sort of working with Bami, thinking about how we could do things differently, how we could exploit new resources, new technologies, to do the work that this institute is known for, which is to instruct and inform people about historical and contemporary slavery. And I'll end there. Thank you very much.